I start. Morning, Michael. I think you're on there. Can you hear us fine? And Patrick?
Yep, I can hear you. Thank you.
Loud and clear. Good morning, everyone.
Okay. Hope everybody's had a chance to look at our lengthy meeting agenda. Can I get a motion to approve it?
I'll put the motion forward.
Okay. Second. Michael, thanks. Any declarations of conflicts of interest?
None.
Nope, nothing.
Hearing none, I will continue on. Let's move to the consent agenda and the highlight of the key messages. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Lisa. Anything you want to focus on there, Lisa?
Thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. What I would like to highlight is, as you already noted, Kevin, it's a very heavy agenda this meeting. We have 3 items for approval.
There's Jeannie. Morning, Jeannie. We just started.
Morning, Jeannie. We have 3 items for approval this morning. The first is the rolling 5-year strategic plan, which is item number 4, together with 2 large capital approvals, items 6 and 7, that total 175 million. In addition to these approvals, we also have the 90% designed stage gate for the Portland's flood protection project, as well as the report from our independent capital monitor BTY on that stage gate. And finally, we also have a couple of in-camera session items related to liquidity and projects. So, Kevin, I might suggest that in the interest of time, given the heavy agenda, unless there are some material questions related to the consent agenda, and we can pause for those, that we largely take the consent agenda items as read. I would say that in terms of the macro dashboard and their finance and admin and capital dashboards, that since the last quarterly meeting where we did look at those dashboards in significant detail, there have been no material changes since that.
Okay. It's very self-explanatory. We'll get into the 3 items for approval a little bit later. Is there any questions from any of the committee members on the key messages?
None from me. Nope.
Nope, I'm okay, Kevin.
Okay. Terrific. I think we need I trust everyone's seen the minutes of our last farm meeting on September 17th. I do need a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move that, Kevin. Jeannie.
Okay, thanks, Jeannie.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay. I think that is moved. The macro dashboard. So where are we next year? We are. There's so many subheadings under this thing.
Yeah, perhaps I'll just highlight, Kevin, in terms of this hasn't materially changed from the last quarter. The one thing I'll note is we do have in the first pie under the corporate plan performance, we're now reporting and tracking against our performance measures, our KPI targets, which is green. We do have orange colors showing for our revenues and our capital investment plan for this year, and the last quarter was green, and it's changed to orange because we're just tracking slightly below the 80% target line for the budget and revenue levels of financials, and that's largely tied to the Portland's flood protection project and the impacts of resequencing certain schedule items. But those are not going to materially impact our ability to comply with our obligations, as well as the ultimate schedule of completing that project on time.
Okay.
Can I just make one comment?
Go ahead, Patrick.
I mean, I agree that the in finance and administration, the current state of liquidity is good, but if we look out a little, if we look out a few years, as we see later on in the document, it is important to give ourselves some breathing room with an increase in that credit facility. So I do think that that's an important element to keep in mind on a go forward.
And we'll talk about that in some length at the closed session.
Exactly.
Thanks, Patrick.
Right. Okay. I know we've got a lot of audits going on. We've got a couple ones coming up that I think the Auditor General audit, we've got the Tri-Government Strategic Review audit, both that are scheduled. One, the Auditor General soon, right? Lisa?
Yes, Bonnie Lysyk, Bonnie Lysyk, the Ontario Auditor General, will be releasing her follow-up audit report on Waterfront Toronto and Ontario Ministry of Infrastructure. I believe it's in the first week of December. And that is a follow-up audit to the audit that she completed in 2018 and released in December 2018. And Waterfront Toronto has fully cooperated with her team in terms of providing information on the implementation of the 22 action items that relate to Waterfront Toronto. And we feel that there'll be reasonably positive results resulting from that. But we are unable to comment any further because it is under lockdown in terms of the report. But it has gone through the factual clearance process, and we have provided comments related to that, which have been incorporated in the report.
And there's no more action items or deliverables from management for that report?
Kevin, maybe I can jump in on this. So we can't get into the details of what'll be in
by the Executive Steering Committee.
Lisa and I met with the Auditor General, and I walked through all of the issues, the outstanding issues with her, and I can attest to Lisa's comment. I think we'll have a very positive response, but I can't get into any more detail till she releases the report.
Okay. And on the cybersecurity audit, I know I agreed to move it to the February meeting just because of the length of the agenda today, but there's nothing, this is not that it's not important and probably overdue, but there's nothing, we're not moving it because there's anything disturbing in there, simply just on our time consideration today. Anything you want to quickly add there, Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to add it as a priority for the corporation. We've been implementing a number of measures and different layers related to security over the last 2 years since the original MNP internal audit on cybersecurity. And we really wanted to have an opportunity to discuss in detail with the committee all of those measures that we put in place. So we thought it was prudent to move it to the February meeting when there weren't as many detailed agenda items, and we would have that opportunity. But we feel we're in a good place from a risk perspective in terms of addressing key items from the original report.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
It would just be that as we look at the cybersecurity, just to keep in mind the changes in legislation as regards data privacy, and just to have a lens within that as to our framework. That would be the only comment. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Patrick.
Okay. Did I gloss over the ERM dashboard? Is there anything we need to? I think I might have.
Yeah, there's no material changes from the last quarter. We don't have any high risks after our mitigation strategies have been in place. It's fairly much the same key risks as were previously reported at the last quarter. And as a result of our mitigation strategies, our risks are medium or low. There are no high risks after our mitigation strategies.
Okay. We'll probably just touch on the COVID update a bit later on. Okay, we're going to be talking about this later in detail as well, but what the liquidity and cash flow forecast, any points you would like to make there, Lisa, on this chart, which is now gone?
Yeah, none other than we're in a good cash position right now, and we continue to expect to be in a good cash position for at least the next 12 or so months, or 36 months, I should say, above 50 million in liquid cash resources.
Okay. Perfect. Let's go to Sampata now on the financial statements. Let us know what we need to know there.
Amparo?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Lisa. They're really the business as usual financial statements. These are financial statements, unaudited financial statements for the 6 months ended September 30th, 2020. If I can just jump to page 32 of the material, where we have the statement of financial activities. You can see that the revenue is a bit lower at 76 million compared to 149 million for the same period last year. And this is largely due to Portland's. We haven't requested anything from the province this quarter. We are waiting for a contribution agreement amendment to go through. We have about 50 million in bills right now that we can invoice, and we hope to invoice them as soon as the amendment is signed, which could be later this quarter or early next quarter in January. In terms of the overall revenues, again, the excess of revenues over expenses, we have about 15 million, and that's largely due to land sales, which happened in first quarter of this year. So no significant change there as well. If I can just flip back to the statement of financial position on page number 31 of the material now. I'll quickly go through some of the key components, just 2 or 3 of them quickly. Cash position is high at 79 million, but it is pretty consistent with what we had in March. And this is like, again, mainly due to the Portland's working capital that we are required to maintain, where city funds us in advance and province and feds reimburse our bills. So that situation or that particular situation continues. In terms of our assets under development, again, we continue to build our assets over development under the development due to construction activity in the Portlands. And our assets have increased about 146 million in the 6-month period since March 31st, 2020. Going down to the liabilities section, we have deferred contributions sitting at 115 million. Again, a large component of this deferred contributions is as a result of the Portlands. We are maintaining about 80 to 85 million in deferred contributions due to the working capital requirement for the Portlands. One last thing that I always like to go through when I'm presenting the financial statements is if I can go to the unrestricted surplus note on page 39 of the material. So if you look at note 12B of this material on this page, it tells you that we are in a deficit position of 11 million right now. Again, this position is going to continue until we realize the first tranche of the Quayside revenues in Q4 of 21-22. These are basically some of the key features that I thought we should go through, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
So that revenue number, which is significantly down because of the Portlands, do you expect that to catch up by year end? Will it be pretty similar? This is just a timing issue.
It's a timing issue for the most part, and as I said, we do have invoices lined up to be invoiced to the province, but we're just waiting for the CA amendment again. There's an amendment which is underway right now. Once that amendment is signed, we are hoping that we'll invoice those costs either this year, later this year, or early next year.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the committee on the financial statements? Okay.
None for me.
Okay. Hearing none, let's keep rolling. Let's look at the Portlands dashboard. I think that's David. Are you? I don't see David's name on here, but I assume he's there.
I'm here, and really, as Lisa mentioned, in the interest of time for today, we're going to take things as read, and we're going to get into a fair bit of detail on the Portlands when we talk about the 90% stage gate. At any rate, there's no serious issues or risk other than what we're going to talk about in camera. Sorry, I'm also hearing noise. So I think that unless there's any questions on this. Kevin, we can move to the next item.
Okay, we'll obviously, as you say, be delving into it further. I think on all the other items, I'm happy to take them as read. I would like to hear, and subject to what the other committee members have, I would like to hear a brief update on the COVID, just given the lockdown post quarter end, and maybe a quick update on what's transpired since this was prepared.
So with respect to the with respect to the construction, there have been no impacts due to the recent government shutdown announcements. All construction projects, almost without fail, all are continuing to proceed, and certainly the projects that we're involved in are all all proceeding with no no impact from the latest restrictions. Apart from the fact that we have now on our projects shut them down to all non-essential personnel. So unless you've got a reason to be on the site, we're not. There will be no tours or any other site visits allowed for the period of this these additional restrictions on due to public health. With respect to the update, we have, as you'll see, now concluded a number of negotiations with some of the sub-trades where, as a result of COVID restrictions, particularly cross-border travel restrictions, agreed to and, pardon me, paid for some additional costs to address those issues. The largest issue we've had, pardon me, is related to one of the contracts that we've recently awarded. The original bid price for that contract was some $1.5 million plus, lower than the final price, and the change in price as we went through the procurement process, we were advised, related largely to the impacts of COVID on the supplier of the material. However, this all happened during a procurement process. While we know the number that was, we've identified a number that was a result of the impact, we still did award this contract to the lowest. So materially, the impact was, was not felt. Unfortunately, the timing of it did result in the cost of this particular supply going up by just over $1.5 million.
Okay, can I have a quick question?
Yeah.
Just as it regards the contracts, are we adjusting our contracts to pre-COVID versus the pre-COVID issue, which would not have incorporated pandemics?
Yeah, for any new, yes, absolutely. For any new contracts, tenders that we issue, we're referencing, obviously referencing the COVID and ensuring to the best of our ability that that bidders have accommodated for and allocated for any foreseeable costs based on what we know. In terms of our CCDC contracts, we haven't issued any since COVID started. We will look whether or not there's any additional specific language, Patrick, that needs to be incorporated. But we are looking at ensuring that any future contracts are, the contractor is covering the risk.
And in turn, I can appreciate that we're trying to incorporate that into the bidder's buffer, but are we making any adjustments as far as our contingencies?
Yeah, so with respect to the one, for example, the ones that we have coming today, one of them we actually have tendered pricing, and the contingency is substantial, and the new tenders already include for COVID risk. With respect to the other capital approval we've got coming today, it was based on a risk assessment which included COVID as a risk of the work. That's the Lakeshore Bridge. So yeah, so I would say the answer is yes. We are addressing COVID as part of the contingency setting process.
Great, thank you.
Dave, I just wanted to ask just to have it on the record about worker health issues. I know it's a Ellis Don responsibility, but given the potential for negative press, are we seeing any issues on worker health that we should be aware of?
None at all, Kevin. It's Ellis Don has implemented all of the best practices necessary to ensure the health and safety of workers, and including daily screening. They do temperature monitoring on site. They isolate where if and it has happened where one of the workers or a worker has tested positively, and when that happens, they implement isolation. So no health and safety issues with respect to COVID at this point in time.
Okay. And before we move off that, I did obviously take as read the quarterly procurement exception and the regulatory compliance and fundraising action plan. Anybody on the committee, I mean, they're all largely self-explanatory, but anybody on the committee have any issues that they want to talk to in those documents?
Well, if I may, I did want to, on the procurement, I did just want to be sure. I did ask that we get a hourly rate for the fairness monitor, just to understand what that was. She's on retainer, so just to understand what the rate is there. That can be a follow-up. And within the context of the Tablino Consulting, I'm assuming that the contract value was for 2 years.
As opposed to per annum? I think that's what it says in there.
Well, it was just regarding involvement for the past 2 years, but then it just says contract value to date. So I just wanted to be clear that that contract value, that was for the entire 2 years.
Yeah, Kevin, it's Jeannie. If I can add to what Patrick's saying, I had a question about that as well. Is that done and closed, or is this an ongoing expense moving forward? I wasn't clear.
Who's going to take that question?
Hi, sorry, maybe I'll take that. This is Betty speaking. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay. So the amount that you're looking at there is an upset limit that is to cover between July 1st this year and to end of June of next year.
Sorry, so the 302,000, so we haven't spent all of that. You're just letting us know that that was the budgeted amount?
Correct. It's an upset limit.
Oh, okay. And how much of that have we spent? Or is this a brand new approval?
I don't have the numbers on me. It's something maybe we can report back to you. Okay.
Okay.
Sure, if we can have it as a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a little trouble hearing. I did have another quick follow-up just on the philanthropy, if I may.
Go ahead.
Just that I would like to see, what metrics we're going to use to establish that we're moving in the right direction. Number of meetings, number of interviews, number of recommendations or leads. So just if we could get a little more context going forward.
Good morning, Patrick. It's Kathleen. Thanks for that question. Are you referring to meetings and leads in connection with approaching donors? Is that
Correct.
the kind of metrics
Yes.
you're looking for?
Yep.
That's great. We will note that. We haven't moved forward with approaching any donors yet. We have to achieve, there's a number of things we have to achieve first, but a key one is alignment with the City of Toronto, and we are working towards that through our fundraising MOU. So we'll just make a note of that feedback in terms of how we're reporting to the committee and incorporate it in the future.
When do you expect the MOU to be signed?
Yes, well, that's a great question, Kevin. So it's been a bit of a challenge. I think it's quite a complex undertaking involving ourselves and a number of different divisions within the city. But if you look on the dashboard, we are now forecasting the execution of the fundraising MOU in the first quarter of the coming fiscal year. So the term sheet, which is the document that we've been working with the city representatives to develop, the term sheet for the MOU, we've been advised that we'll be able to bring that to City Council for approval in the upcoming quarter, so January to March. And then once the term sheet's approved, I hope you can hear me. There's a bit of an echo.
Yep, we can hear you.
Once the term sheet has been approved by City Council, it's quite a robust term sheet, and it will be I hope, a simple matter relatively to take the terms and transform it into an actual MOU, which will then be executed by ourselves in the city.
Okay, thank you. Any other points that I've missed or people want to touch on before we move on to discuss some of the capital projects or the strategic plan?
Kevin, if I may, I just wanted to point out that Kathleen, who's been leading this fundraising activity, is for personal reasons going to be leaving us shortly in December. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the great work that Kathleen has provided over the terms, supporting Waterfront Toronto and in particular supporting myself.
That's not good news for us, Kathleen. Hopefully it's good news for you. Certainly enjoyed working with you, and it will be big shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. Thank you so much, George. I wasn't expecting that, and I'm just tickled. So thank you for that comment and feedback, and thank you very much, Kevin. Also, I really appreciate that.
I mean, one element in that regard and would be just the thoughts going forward. If you could leave those with George, I think it would be useful for given the great work that you've done so far.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, it's noted on the dashboard, but we are recruiting the fundraising director at the moment. We're bringing on board professional fundraising staff. We've only just started the first round of interviews, but Lisa and I met with a candidate on Tuesday, and we were very, very, very happy with the quality of all the candidates, and then also with having met one, it was even better. So I think you're going to be in very good hands, I guess, is the point.
Patrick, I do have her phone number, so not to worry about that.
Kathleen, it's Jeannie here. Thank you for everything.
Oh, well, thank you,
all of
Jeannie.
your hard work the last several years. We'll miss you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That's a very effective and timely presentation of the consent agenda. Let's turn now to the, I know we've got to roll the 5-year plan another year forward, so I'm going to turn it over to, and this is one requiring the approval of the committee. So Lisa, do you want to finish that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. So in the interest of time, I will assume that the rolling 5-year strategic plan has been read. However, I would like to make some highlights before opening it up for questions from the committee. As the committee may recall, our Act, Waterfront Toronto's Act, does require the board to approve an annual business plan for the next fiscal year that begins on April 1st, 2021, for the end of December this year. We're also required to prepare a 1-year corporate plan annually and then a 5-year plan every 5 years. And what we do is we fulfill both of these requirements through this one rolling 5-year plan. So we'll, for example, have an Appendix 1 that provides specific details for the next fiscal year, and that is our corporate plan. And then we have another appendix that shows the 5-year horizon. And likewise, we provide KPI targets for both the single year and the 5-year horizon. So in terms of this year's report, or plan, I should say, the theme of it is that Waterfront Toronto's work matters now more than ever, particularly in a post-global pandemic recovery. And included in the document, before I get into the financial highlights, you'll see things like the transformation of the Portlands as a result of our flood protection project, including information on the 4 new bridges that are coming to connect Elias Island to the mainland, all 4 of which are expected to be in place by the end of next year. And you'll also see a special feature on public art, together with information about diversity and inclusion throughout the document, particularly with the Indigenous community and how we're seeking to work closely with that community and reflect Indigenous cultural elements into our projects. So in terms of financial highlights, what I wanted to point out for the Farm Committee is that in being asked to recommend to the board for approval this plan, there's 2 key aspects. The first is the continued strategic direction of the corporation over the next 5 years. And that is largely rooted in our 3 strategic priority areas, being the priority projects. And this, I know maybe you could move to page 125 of the materials, which gives the table of the 5 years. So we've got our 3 strategic priorities, one being our priority projects, which is 813 million, and it's largely related to the Portlands Flood Protection Project. And that set of projects is fully funded, largely through government funding. The second on the top right-hand side of the page is our next generation sustainable communities at 177 million. And that's primarily our Quayside project. And again, that's fully funded through land sale revenues versus government revenues. And then third area of our 3 strategic projects is our signature projects at 313 million. And these are our aspirational projects that are dependent on the success of our fundraising strategy. So these are largely unfunded at the moment, with the exception of 20 million of seed capital that's funded from Waterfront Toronto's own revenues. So that's the first piece in terms of strategic direction. The second piece that the Farm Committee is being asked to recommend to the board for approval relates to the actual 1-year corporate plan. And I just wanted to highlight, and I know if you just move back to the previous page, which is Appendix 1, which gives the corporate plan overview. Just go, yeah, that's it. So set out in this appendix, what we have is a budget of 372 million in investments that includes just under 20 million for corporate operating costs, as well as 491 million in revenues, which I'd like to highlight. A significant portion this year is actually, of 40%, is anticipated to be funded or sourced from non-government sources, primarily land. So just in terms of our investments, while this plans for 372 million in spending for the 2021-22 year, I'd like to highlight for the committee that all of our expenditures are undertaken in accordance with board-approved delegations of authority, as well as the capital project approvals that the Farm Committee and board approve. So with respect to the capital project approvals, all of the projects here that we're working on, we don't spend any money.
So 3 months.
Infrastructure or the capital costs related to those projects until we've attained the capital project approvals. And then one other final note in terms of the 21-22 corporate plan amount does include some additional funding related to the fundraising action plan that Kathleen was just talking about, the phase 2 of $6.4 million. And that largely relates to, again, building our fundraising capacity of about 1 million of the 6.4. And the remainder relates to advancing the design and planning of the signature projects, as well as funding our existing staff resources, together with about 400,000 of incremental staff resources. And these costs are to be funded from land sale revenues or Waterfront Toronto's own revenues. In terms of a couple of things that have changed or that are new in this year's plan compared to the last year's plan that the Farm Committee recommended for approval to the board. Previously, we'd just include for the Quayside project, we'd just included soft costs related to the initial implementation of Quayside because it was at early stages. This year we have included more of the implementation costs associated with Quayside. So you'll see that there are about 177 million related to the 5-year period related to Quayside, and also the funding related to that. And then the final item of note, before I'll turn it over to the committee for questions, relates to our corporate contingency reserve allocation. In last year's plan, we increased that allocation to 60 million. And this year we have adjusted that number to 30 million in order to allocate 30 million towards the Quayside development and related project trade-off contingencies, largely because there are a number of considerations in terms of how we implement Quayside. We haven't released the RFP to the developer yet, and so we want to retain more a contingency related to that project. Now we're doing that on the condition that should the amount of the revenues that are tied to that contingency be realized at a higher amount than forecast, then we will reinstate that corporate contingency reserve back up to the 60 million level that we had established last year. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to the committee, Kevin, for any questions, and I'd be pleased to answer them.
I just have one, and note that the 60 million contingency is really a reallocation between priorities as events have changed. But does this remind me again whether I don't think they do. These numbers incorporate the Lakeshore East Bridge and public realm that we're going to talk about later. We haven't incorporated those as of yet in this, have we?
No, we have not. So when we get to that item, part of that motion would be to adopt and include that and update this plan for that $150 million additional scope item.
Okay, and I note that you did on the contingency in the motion that we're going to say clarify the conditions and clarify that amount. So it's much clearer now in terms of what we're doing with that and our ability to get it back as events change. So appreciate that clarity. Any questions from the rest of the committee members?
Well, I guess I'm comfortable with the financial elements that Lisa's pointed out. Am I the one creating the feedback here?
I'll mute myself to see.
Okay, so from that standpoint, I'm comfortable with the financial elements here. There's certainly some elements that we could speak to, like on the KPIs. I didn't see anything regarding a marine element in a KPI, which, given that we just done the marine strategy and that was a focus I thought could be useful. The same thing with the Indigenous element. I realize we have something on employment, but if there's an effort being made on from an Indigenous perspective, should there not be a KPI that follows that? So, I had a number of different points, which I'm happy to do a follow-up with. I did a little bit with Lisa yesterday. So I just wanted to know, can we still influence the document, at that KPI level before it goes to the board?
Kevin, can I also jump in on the KPI issue? It's George.
Hey, George.
I think one of the things that internal audit has shared with us in reviewing our KPIs is we have a large number of KPIs relative to any other organization. So I think, there should be some discussion with the board as we review the KPIs as to which ones we can report on generally and which ones we want to publicly report on. So I just caution that, we have, how many KPIs do we have in total right now, Lisa?
We've got it down to 26.
Okay. So we just need to think about which ones are probably relatively more important and have that discussion.
Yeah, and then the other aspect of KPIs is the target setting. And so for some of them, you need to establish what the baseline information is, which is not always apparent. So sometimes it's better to wait to the end of the year when we have the baseline and take an actual and then set the target for the following year in the plan.
I welcome any optimization and being realistic. The number isn't the goal. It's the effectiveness and transparency and the message that you're sending with the KPIs. So I welcome that. I guess my only comment is in approving this or recommending it to the board, can there still be some, I'm assuming we can still make some fluctuations in terms of comments following the approval. I mean, I think big picture, I'm comfortable with it. I just wanted to get a little bit more into some of the nitty gritties around the KPIs.
Yes, there is that opportunity, Patrick, to make some further changes in it.
Perfect.
I guess one of the governance issues here is on just recommending it from the farm committee, or, you know, we're obviously obligated to recommend on the financial aspects, but on some of the more strategic and KPI initiatives, isn't this a discussion that the entire board should have as opposed to just the farm committee recommending a set list under the strategic plan? I asked that out of a little bit of ignorance, but that's the way it would seem to work. Is that the way it's worked in the past?
Yes, it has, Kevin.
Okay, so there will be room for dialogue at the full board on, and are we really just recommending the financial aspects to them, or is our mandate broader than that?
There is a draft resolution attached to this cover sheet, which it does cover the entire document, but the focus is on the actual financial elements of it. So it's the entire document kind of in substance, but with focus on the financial pieces.
Okay. But at the end of the day, you're saying there will be room for further dialogue on the KPIs and strategic elements of this.
Well, we could in our recommendation highlight the need for a more wholesome discussion on those elements at the board.
Yeah, Kevin, you could, as you'll be reporting back on the farm meeting at the December board meeting, you could reference that there was reference to reviewing the KPIs and making sure that the board has the opportunity to adjust appropriately, as does management, as we look at the issues going forward.
Okay. That seems like a fair approach. Okay. And one question for you, George, just so that we get a consistent message. And I've read the materials, but our new slogan, now more than ever, how do you want us to answer that when people say now more than ever what?
Yeah, I think our mandate is relevant now more than ever. Our mandate after COVID, I think, has just been amplified. The things that we were set up for, you know, the public realm, the dealing with inclusivity in our building our community, and you know, the whole public realm access. I think we just want to emphasize that our mandate is probably more relevant now than ever.
I would add equality.
Yeah, equality in there and diversity. I don't know, Cameron, if you want to reference anything else, since.
Well, I think, you know, if the piece, and Ginny was quoted in it by Kofi Hope in the Star, made this actual point. During this period, we need more organizations with a focus that have the sponsorship and backing and of governments to take focused, deliberative steps to regenerate communities post-COVID. The Rexdale example was in his piece, and George just appeared with ULI and a fellow from the Brookings Institute who reinforced the need for these organizations. His view is that there will be more agencies like Waterfront Toronto throughout North America and the world post-COVID. So I think there is now more than ever an importance to remind people that we've been working for the last 20 years, but we're as relevant today as we've, in fact, more so perhaps than we were 20 years ago.
As Cameron mentioned, I did reference, in my 35 years of public service experience, the issues that communities are grappling with, especially the social issues, are so complex now that no one level of government can address them by themselves. And therefore, agencies like ourselves are really important to be able to pull governments together. And, even with regards to the recent visit of the politicians for the Cherry Street North Bridge, they emphasized in their remarks to the public that this is an example of what can happen when three levels of government work together. So I think that's really, Kevin, to your question, the messaging or the rationale behind the messaging.
George, I concur fully with that statement, and I think that just as COVID has accelerated things, it's accelerated the need for the three levels of government to work together to be as effective as they can, given the upcoming fiscal constraints. So I applaud that.
Yeah, Kevin, it's Jeannie here. Yeah, that's an idea that, I chatted with Kofi for the article, and it's an idea that I've been socializing at different levels of government as well. So I had a question about the strategic plan. Overall, it's a good document. I'm wondering if we are talking enough about our equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives moving forward. I know there was a kind of a mention of it, but I think when you talk about now more than ever, I think that's a big part of it. Is we need to have diversity literally at our tables in planning our cities in order to ensure we have better outcomes as well. So that's a question. I agree about the KPIs. There's a lot of them, and maybe we can group them into buckets. And then my third question with Lisa was around the fundraising. The 1.3 million target each year for kind of fundraising goals. I assume that was a figure given to us by our fundraising consultant, or I'm just curious how that number was arrived at.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jeannie. That's a number that Waterfront Toronto has developed, and it kind of splits out between a portion of it relates to 3 new staff that are going to be dedicated to fundraising, including the fundraising director. A portion of it relates to support from fundraising advisors such as KCI, who has been supporting us, as well as legal support to develop the legal agreements and gift agreements and those kinds of things, as well as the third piece would relate to a fundraising campaign and the communication and other costs related to that. So the 1.3 million is what we've forecast, particularly for the 21-22 year, when we come again after going through the experience of actually looking to launch a campaign and go through that. We will have a better insight in terms of whether it's 1.3 million per year flat going forward, or whether that needs to be adjusted. I would like to just highlight, though, that we will be doing a feasibility study with respect to our fundraising ambitions in the first quarter of next year. So in the April to June period, we're going to be doing a feasibility study to really assess the likelihood of our success in a fundraising campaign for our first signature project for our destination playground, such that, before we invest further money into that, we want to make sure that we've got a really good chance of success before we do that. So I just wanted to add that check and that study is part of the plan and is part of the cost there.
So worst case scenario, so we've committed to spending 6.4 million. And then we'll have this feasibility study done at the beginning of next year, and we'll get a better handle on how much money we should be able to raise.
So I would say in terms of capital at risk, out of that 6.4 million, before we have the results of that feasibility study, we'll probably have spent less than a million of that 6.4. So we're not going to go forward and spend that before we know that we've got a great chance of success.
Okay, great. And I don't know, George, if you can comment on equity, diversity, inclusion, if
Yeah.
that's something we should bring forward a little bit, highlight a bit more, where we talk about more than ever.
Yeah, actually, the management team, we're providing comments. That is one of the comments that I have to share with our team. I think we should highlight, we're doing a lot to educate ourselves, to train, and we've taken a lot of actions internally, including looking at our procurement policies and trying to put provisions in there that would deal with diversity and equity. I think also in my statement, I'm going to be working with Cameron. I think we reference, the impact of COVID that really has amplified our mandate. But I think I also want to point out that COVID has hit different communities in different ways, and really is, I think, again, emphasize the challenges that we have as the distribution of wealth is actually a big challenge, and we need to recognize that as we move forward with our mandate as well. So we will take a look at that and look to emphasize that message more, both probably in my overall CEO statement, but also throughout the report.
Or does that get its own little section in the table of contents? Even if it's
Yeah, you know what? I was looking at the report over yesterday. There's a couple of things that we have kind of spread throughout, which was probably the work that we're doing on the diversity and the work that we're doing in the Indigenous is spread throughout. And I'm looking at discussing that with staff to see if we can kind of centralize those messages so people actually see the collective effort we're putting on both those topics.
Great, thank you.
Kevin, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just was saying I agree with Jeannie's comment that it's a good report, and with the proviso on further discussion at the board level, we have a resolution on page that's in front of us here. Can I get a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you. Seconded.
I'll second it. Kevin, is Jeannie?
Thanks, Jeannie. Okay. Carried. Thanks everyone for your work on this, and we'll look forward to some more dialogue at the board meeting in December. Let's keep moving along here. We're on a roll. Capital approval. Let's talk about the in-water pipes first. I think that's David, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Kevin. And could I ask that everybody mute themselves as we move forward? I just wanted to highlight some of the key messages and information in the this capital approval. So for the East Bayfront in-water pipes, this is phase 1 of the project. Both phase 1 and phase 2 were included in last year's capital plan, strategic plan. However, when the project was tendered earlier this year, the market prices we got back were higher than the estimates that the consultants had provided. And as such, funding really is only available for phase 1 of the project, and we're not going to be able to take advantage of what we had hoped to do, which was to do phase 1 and phase 2 together. Phase 1 specifically is the infrastructure part of the project. It's the in-water pipes complete the stormwater management system for East Bayfront. They connect the dockside and bayside stormwater systems to allow for the full treatment of stormwater throughout the precinct. Phase 2 of the project relates to dock wall reinforcement in public realm, and we are looking to include that in a future plan once appropriate funding has been identified and allocated for that work. The importance of doing this project is these are the last components of the stormwater treatment system or management system for East Bayfront and West Donlands, all of which need to be completed for us to hand over to the City of Toronto on completion of the Cherry Street Stormwater treatment facility, and on the completion of these 2 pipes, we'll be able to do that. And we've been operating the various components of the stormwater treatment facilities across West Donlands and East Bayfront since about 2011, and part of our plan is to obviously turn those over to the City of Toronto, as soon as we can, so that they can take over operations and management of those systems. And then one final note with respect to the funding for the project. The funding has been identified in the capital plan, and involves or includes some future funding, Section 37 money from the City of Toronto. Pending our receipt of that funding, which is forecast in a couple of years, we will be borrowing about $12 million to fund the phase 1 work as it moves forward. So if we can move into the presentation, I'll go through it fairly quickly just to describe what it is that we're actually building on. So you can see that, oh, we're going through it quickly. There we go. Yeah, so I've given the background on it. The area we're talking about is in East Bayfront, as shown, reducing the overall cost of the, the pipes in question are, as you can see, connect the Bayside precinct to the Dockside precinct in East Bayfront. And this has been part of our plan since the original construction of Sherbourne Common and Dockside. Okay, just the in terms of the history, this goes back to the original EA in 2006, and over the course of the last 14 years or so, various components of the stormwater management system have been completed, including Sherbourne Common and the work in the treatment facility there. The EA has been amended a couple changes in how stormwater is to be treated. Originally, it was to be treated not actively, but passively, meaning stormwater was to be collected and the sediment to really fall out of the stormwater. In further discussions with the city, they elected that they would prefer an active system where there's actually mechanically, the sediment is mechanically separated from the water. And that's important because it allows the treatment of that water through ultraviolet to get rid of any of the bacteria, E. coli, cryptosporidium, etc. So this is, as I said, the final piece of the stormwater treatment system and management system to complete before we can turn this over to Toronto Water. Next. So this, the main components of the stormwater system, really the stormwater collects in CSOs and in a new attenuation tank that we've constructed in Bayside. We are going to connect that attenuation tank to the Dockside CSO, as you'll see on the next page, and then the water will, stormwater will be pumped to the Cherry Street Stormwater Treatment Facility, where it will be treated and then brought back to, go to the next slide, brought back to Sherbourne Common here, and run through the pavilion, the artwork, and the water features, completing the intended stormwater integration in Sherbourne Common. As you know, we've been using lake water to run the Sherbourne Common water features and artwork for the last 8 or 9 years, and intend to replace that with stormwater once these connections are complete. Next. Just another illustration of how the entire system works from East Bayfront to Cherry Street. Next. Get to a little more detail. So this is the work that we're doing. Essentially, it's 2 maintenance chambers that connect a stormwater pipe that runs from, essentially takes stormwater from Dockside on the left to Bayside on the right, and then is, as I say, pumped to Cherry Street. The stormwater then comes back from Cherry Street through Bayside, through the pipe, the second pipe, and then into Sherbourne Common, where it feeds the public art and the water features. Next. This is the overall plan. The area highlighted in blue is the area that we'll be doing. So we'll be creating the structure that supports the pipes. That structure will also in the future support both the dock wall reinforcing and the boardwalk, which are part of phase 2. But for the moment, we're just completing the structure and the pipes themselves. Next. This is what it looks like in graphic form, axometric Again, the boardwalk will be part of phase 2, as will the concrete dock wall reinfacing work. Again, this shows what the phase 2 work looks like, and once we have identified appropriate funding for that, we will be back to the farm committee and the board to look at obtaining capital approvals to do this work. Okay. Next. And this is the, in the fullness of time, the intent to have the boardwalk and finger piers across all of East Bayfront. Next. So with respect to the capital budget, we are looking for approval of $23.7 million. Some of that has been spent for engineering to date. We have, as I mentioned, tendered the project. We have received our pricing from contractors from the market, and that pricing is consistent with the budget that we've put forward for approval here, including contingencies. So we are looking to get farm committee and then board approval to go ahead and award that contract and commence this work in the spring.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just a quick question on that. Will there be an RFP for that work, or has that already been?
It's already been issued. We have already put this work out to tender.
We've put it out to tender, but have we picked a bid yet?
We actually have the bids in. We know who the selected bidder will be once we have the approval to award.
Got it.
David, it's Jeannie here. I had a question. Why shouldn't the dock wall reinforcing also be done with phase 1? Or does it make sense? Just you've already mobilized to be doing that work in the water. Does it make more sense to, or why was it separated out? I guess is it just a cost issue?
Pressures that we faced at 90% cost issue, Jeannie. The original plan, if we go back, the original plan was simply to install these pipes. We saw a potential opportunity about 2 years ago to add the dock wall reinforcing and the boardwalk and public realm to the project based on estimates the contract or consultants had provided us. So we went ahead and we did all that design and intended to actually do all that work, but it is a cost issue. The pricing for the work came in substantially higher than the funding that we had allocated and higher than the estimates that our consultants had provided. And really the funding that we have available is only sufficient to cover the infrastructure, the stormwater management system, and we have to identify another source of funding for the balance.
Does the dock wall refacing, is it urgent? Does it need to be done sooner rather than later? Or is it just like a nice to have, we should do it later?
It's a nice to have. It does not need to be done now, and the plan that we've got allows us to do it later. It was always intended to be done later. We had just hoped that we'd be able to take advantage of the synergies of doing this all now. It's just that from a cost perspective, it's not worked out that way.
Because I can see the boardwalk and the fish habitat, that I can see as part of phase 2. But again, I'm just trying to think, is it going to cost more money to go back in and do the dock wall refacing later? But I guess you guys have kind of looked at all the different pricing options.
Yeah, the additional cost, because we have to remobilize for the other components anyway, the additional cost will relate to escalations essentially. Okay. To do the work, if we could fund it, if we had the funding for it today, I think we'd prefer to do it today, but we've allowed for it to be done later.
How much more is it, just out of curiosity?
Oh, that component of it is actually a couple $1 million.
So if you're looking for approvals of 23.75, and it would be what, 25 million just to get it all done at the same time?
I'd have to check. I don't remember the exact number. It's several $1 million. I can certainly find out before the board meeting, or actually probably today I could identify that amount. But yeah, it would involve additional capital, and Lisa would obviously have to identify additional funding. And we're already, as you know, borrowing $12 million to fund the work that we're doing. So it would require some additional borrowing for sure.
The cost increase sorry, Jeannie. Are you finished?
Oh, no, I was just gonna, yeah, I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask, my fellow committee members what you think. To me, that seems like major work. We're in the water anyway. If it's only $2-3 million, maybe it's worth doing it. And I'm assuming, Lisa, that when you talk about money from land sale and Section 37, is that from Quayside land sale and Quayside Section 37?
No, none of this relates to Quayside.
Okay, is from
it's from
Bayfront?
Bayside, yeah, East Bayfront.
Okay, so we have that money. So we know what pot of money we have available.
We do. We just don't have any access to allocate at this time to the dock wall reinforcement. So we can relook at it because it's a matter of prioritizing where we put our funding sources. We can relook at it, and we have the corporate contingency reserve as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering from a construction, like just a, an actual mobilization, if it just makes sense to do it now. Anyway, sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I mean, my question was just, given the cost increase, the nature of the cost increase, and is it something that would be potentially applicable to other projects, or one-off specific to this endeavor?
No, we think it was a one-off specific to this endeavor, Patrick.
Just because that obviously has implications on if you're using the contingency, right? So, and sorry, so we're just trying to establish what the savings would be if we were to engage, do phase 2 at the same time. Jeannie, is that what you're asking?
Not all of phase 2, just the dock wall reinforcing in particular. Because doing the boardwalk and the fish habitat, I can see that as kind of a phase 2 type of work. But just trying to think about on-site mobilization, you have all the people and the machinery. And my other question was, is this really urgent? Which David said is not really, but it sounds like it's something that should be done eventually. But if it's a matter of $2 million, I guess my question is, if it's just 2 million, quote unquote, just. Does it just make sense to do it now all at the same time?
So Kevin, maybe, I'm sorry, I was going to just say, it's George, that maybe David can report back and we approve us going forward with this portion, but we report back to the board with answers around the possibility of moving forward with the dock wall and what the implications would be.
And presumably there's a reason, David, you didn't recommend that at this time. Is that simply because of the borrowing, or is it?
Well, it's not the borrowing so much as the funding. So we, is to ensure that we've identified the funding, because as Lisa says, in prioritizing what we're doing to do the dock walls may mean that there's something else in our plan that we're not going to be able to do, and we've got a finite amount of revenues that we can allocate. So ensuring that those revenues are available really is what we looked at here. And yes, we can add, George is right. We can look at for the board meeting, look at what the cost is. We can work with Lisa to see if there's, where the revenue could be allocated from and what the potential trade-offs would be. And then the board can make a decision. Yeah,
I think the rest would agree with what the board said. Let's approve this and have you come back to us to say if there's valid reasons to make adjustments.
Sure. There's no flood protection element to this, right?
No.
Okay. All right. I'll make the motion. Pardon me?
I just gonna ask Jeannie if she was comfortable with that approach.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah. We approve what's in front of us, and then, but I think, like I said, just it would be good to know what the additional cost is to get it done.
The one other thing I should add here, and it's not, we don't have the list in this month's farm meeting, but this phase 2 work has actually, we put it to the city in terms of a potential for federal stimulus funding. We don't know whether this particular project the phase 2 project specifically, we don't know whether the phase 2 project would actually be carried by and approved by the federal government or the city for that matter, assuming that they're allocating stimulus money under the program that the city have identified. So I'll put that out there, that we've got, we're still waiting for word on whether or not this may or may not make the list and then may or may not get approved. But having said that, we'll see if we're able to report back on that with at the board meeting as well.
But David, to your point, if it was approved, it would give us greater flexibility to look at those other issues.
100%. Yeah. Kevin, you're on.
You're on mute. Sorry.
I keep going because of that feedback. I'm usually, as chair, just stay unmuted all the time. But can I get a motion on on the resolution on page 154?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Second.
I'll second it. Or go ahead, Michael.
Yep. Okay, thanks. That's carried. Bayfront and water pipes. Let's now turn to Lakeshore Bridge East. I noted that the city staff report came out this week on this. David highlighted that to me. So why don't you walk us through what we're doing there?
Okay, again, highlights. This is scope is associated with the Portlands Flood Protection Project. Under the Portlands project, I'll get into more detail in the presentation. We have work to do on the Lakeshore Bridge under the Gardner Environmental Assessment project. The city has work to do on the bridge, and there are some other conditions where, Ian, could we mute the boardroom too?
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks. There are some conditions that have led us and the city to look at the work that needs to be done in this area and determine that it's more efficient, more economical, and safer to consolidate some of the work that is proposed in the future under the Gardner EA with the work that we're proposing to do or we need to do under the Portlands Flood Protection Project. So I'll get into it in a little more detail as we go through the presentation. But what we're looking for is approval of about $147.5 million, contingent on City Council approving the project going ahead and providing the funding for that project through a delivery agreement that we would negotiate with the city after council has considered and approved this in mid-December. So can we move on and I'll walk through the details. So we're going to brief on what the project is, what the current status is, and obviously to get the Farm Committee's recommendation to proceed with the work. Just in background, the board did approve and the city funded $16 million to complete the pre-construction works for this project in March. So we have completed design to 90%, undertaken to do construction estimates, pre-construction estimates, and undertaken a risk assessment, worked with the city to identify the costs and the scope of the work that would be included. And we are now here looking to get the approval for the construction phase of the project starting next year. I would note that this project is not currently included in the long-term in our strategic plan, pending board and city council approval. In terms of the further background, the area we're talking about is here where the Lakeshore Bridge or where the Lakeshore Boulevard crosses the Don River. And you can see above that crossing are the ramps from Logan Avenue on Lakeshore to up to the Gardner Expressway, on and off. In the background, Portland's flood protection. Our goal, obviously, providing flood protection, and in order to do that, we need to widen and deepen the Don River at this location. We need to create a sediment and debris management area. To relocate the dredging out of the Keating Channel. We need to lengthen the Lakeshore Bridge in order to widen and deepen the river. And then there's some flow control constructions that need to happen, all to be complete by December 2023. For the Gardner East EA, it's to improve the connectivity to the city's waterfront across the foot of the city. It's also supporting the Portland's flood protection. And the requirements thereof are to realign and reconstruct the Gardner ramps to and from the Don Valley Parkway to redo the on and off ramps to the Gardner when that work happens. It's really to move the Gardner ramps north of where they are now to create developable area adjacent to the Keating Channel in North Keating. And then to widen the Lakeshore Bridge. So while we are extending it, the Gardner team needs to widen it and then undertake public realm improvements and redo the traffic configuration on Lakeshore Boulevard once the Logan ramps are next. So you can see that our scope involves there are 2 existing bays of the Lakeshore Bridge. We will be constructing 2 additional bays and then excavating out below those bays to provide for additional hydraulic capacity in the river. The Gardner team, on the other hand, will be adjusting the ramps to and from the Gardner and Don Valley Parkway, as well as ramps onto the Gardner onto and off the Gardner from Lakeshore Boulevard. Next. In terms of project timelines, our work is to start in the spring of 2021 and be completed at the end of 2023. The Gardner work is forecast, this isn't committed yet, but forecast to begin in 2026, to be complete in 2028. So really 2 fairly long construction programs, both of which will have impacts on traffic and operations at the mouth of the Don. And the third bar you see here is the estimated timeline associated with consolidating both projects into a single project. So it can be done in about the same amount of time as a single project. So consolidating substantially the amount of impact to the public and to traffic. Next. In terms of scope, the Lakeshore Boulevard, we would be, as you can see from this rendering, reconstructing Lakeshore Boulevard from the Don River or Don Roadway to Carlaw, creating some new intersections, new signalization that doesn't exist today because of the existing ramps. We would be doing public realm improvements, relocating the Harbor Lead Line rail into the center median of the new or the rebuilt Lakeshore Boulevard. Right now it runs along the north side past Carlaw and then comes south to feed into the Portlands. So all of this is part of the expanded scope being considered as part of the Lakeshore Boulevard East revitalization project. Next. With respect to the bridge itself, the work that we have to do is identified here in gray. So essentially we've got 2 narrower roadways, eastbound, westbound, over the Don River. The work that the city would need to do in the future is to widen those 2 additional bays, shown in sort of pink orange color here, and reconstruct the 2 existing bays, which is as they've reached the end of their essentially reached the end of their useful life. But that work is part of the Gardner work as opposed to part of the Portland's flood protection. So you can see we would go in and do some work over the next couple of years, which would effectively have to be almost entirely redone again, 3 or 4 years after we were complete. Next. The other issue we've got is health and safety issues. So when we excavate or do work under the Gardner ramps, if we were to do our work under the Gardner ramps, number one, they are problematic from the perspective of getting equipment under. So we've got caissons that have to be placed at work, below an existing operating freeway ramp. Is there some health and safety concerns. In addition, because we're excavating below those ramps, we would have to underpin them, and that is also a substantial risk. We don't want to lose these ramps. We don't want them to fall down, obviously. So underpinning them would be a risky endeavor. However, it could be done. The other issue here, of course, is underpinning those ramps and doing this work. These ramps are going to come down. If we don't take them down now, they will be coming down in the next 5 years. So spending any amount of money, and it would be substantial amounts of money to spend to underpin them, just so that we can take them down again 5 years from now, or the city can, doesn't seem to be a very efficient way to do work. So that's one of the other drivers for consolidating this work into a single project. Next. So it's a sort of two-phase work that we've been dealing with, the pre-construction that I mentioned, which carries us through the tendering in the spring, but we will only go to tender if phase 2 is approved by the board and by City Council, which is the construction phase, which will commence next, late spring, summer. Current status, 90%, I mentioned 90% design is complete. The contractor is looking at preparing for tender. City staff report recommending this work and contract to the city has been, to City Council, has been tabled. It will go to the Infrastructure Committee first next week and then to City council in mid-December. And as I mentioned, once council has
optimization to keep us on budget.
Proceed to negotiate a delivery agreement with the city. We are working now on obtaining the various permits, all the various permits that are required to allow the project to proceed. Next. Just as background, as you know, we need capital approval for any project that is greater than $5 million, which this obviously is. And we have undertaken, estimating in a risk assessment process rather than at 30%, at 90%, just to provide additional, I guess, comfort that the costs that we go to City Council with and to the board, come to the board with for approval will be the, we'll be able to work within those budgets to complete the project. In terms of the actual cost, hard construction is estimated to be 110 million. Soft costs, many of which have been, or soft costs to complete the project, including contract administration, just around 7. We've got a $27 million contingency, so probably around 25% overall. And then, so that's the 147.24. And then the 16 million that's already been approved to 163. Now, this also does not include the money or the funding and the cost of work that Waterfront Toronto has already committed to incur and invest on the Lakeshore Bridge. So there's another $40+ million associated with this particular project, and the work that we were doing under the Portland's flood protection project in extending the bridge is not included in this amount. And all of this funding will be provided by the City of Toronto.
Agency, I don't know.
We have a risk on the Enbridge 20-inch relocation that we'll discuss later in the meeting in closed session. There are a variety of other risks that we're taking into account as we put together the contingency and identify how the project's going to be done. This is consistent with our corporate risk tolerance. While it is a large project, it actually does reduce the risk to us, to the city, in terms of the construction and the potential issues surrounding doing work around existing and operating ramps of the Gardiner Expressway, and health and safety issues working under those ramps while they're still in operation. And here's the motion. So approval of the 147 million, subject to the approval by City Council and the execution of the funding agreement, that the project be constructed by Ellis Don under their existing Portland's flood protection construction management agreement. Ellis Don are obviously responsible under that agreement for the work that's got to be done on Lakeshore Bridge, and this is just additional work that they would do as part of that. And then the project would need to be added to the corporation's 5-year strategic plan, pending council approval. So, questions?
At the end of the day, David, this is a priority for the city. They're paying for it all. Saves us some money and execution time on some of our priorities. I'd ask the question of what, if they're paying for it all, why do we need to approve it? And obviously, it's under our bylaws because of the size of this expenditure, but this is something the city really wants to see happen, and it's in our best interest. Is that a fair summary?
That is a fair summary, Kevin. Yeah.
Okay, discussion from the committee?
I had 2 quick questions. Just if there was any meaningful change from the pre-construction to now. in terms of surprises other than Enbridge.
No changes to the scope that was being considered, and really no surprises in terms of the pre-construction work and the design work that we undertook. The scope that we have now is consistent with the scope we had intended and had planned on earlier this year before we started the design.
And then the other was just, given that there's 40 million that is coming from the flood protection, is there any element of contingency that comes along with that?
Yeah, the 40 million includes a contingency allocation from our perspective as well. So we'll obviously need to keep track from an accounting perspective of the various costs and components of the project, and we'll do that with Elliston and our capital program management office.
Unless there's other questions, I'll put forward the motion.
Okay.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Okay, Terry.
That's me again. Jeannie.
David, quick question on the previous one. I realize I've been muted. I'm fine with obviously the motion being approved. Just wanted to ask about, are we going to have to increase our insurance?
No, we don't think so. I mean, this will be a change to Elliston's contract, and that will come with an insurance premium increase. But I don't believe need to change the basic terms of our insurance. We've got a substantial amount of insurance already based on the $1.25 billion project that we're doing.
Okay, and one last question regarding all the project risks associated with this. It obviously makes sense from what we're trying to do, but it adds a lot of other, I think, looks like people we need to coordinate with, and I guess the city's going to be supporting us and behind us 100% to try to make sure there aren't any delays on getting these approvals.
Yeah, absolutely. We're working in close coordination and cooperation with the city engineering, construction services, structures, and transportation.
I had a quick question. There's going to be a nice continuum in terms of access to the larger waterfront areas, so the Portland and additional through bike and pedestrian paths.
Yeah, the public there is new public realm, including extensions of the and improvements to the bicycle paths, the Martin Goodman Trail, pedestrian links at east-west on Lakeshore, as well as southbound into the Portlands through the new intersections at Booth and improvements at Carlaw. So yeah, there will be that will be part of the ultimate deliverable through the improvements to Lakeshore Boulevard.
Great, thanks.
Kevin, you're on mute again.
Yeah. We're on now to the, thanks everyone for that discussion. We're on to the 90% stage gate discussion under Portlands. That's you again, isn't it, David?
Hopefully my voice will hold out. I should have actually had Gombos do some of these, but that's okay. Portland's 90% stage gate, so we've gone through a very lengthy process before coming to the Farm Committee with this report. Highlights for the 90% stage gate: we are still forecasting that the project will be complete on time and on budget. We have confirmed or reconfirmed the estimates that were undertaken at the 60% stage gate. So in the last year, the actual cost of the project has really not increased, and which is good news, including from a tender perspective and a constructive perspective. So I'll get into some of the details on that. There have been no scope changes incorporated. The only scope change is the one that we just talked about, which we would incorporate once the board and council has approved the additional work at Lakeshore Boulevard. The contingency remaining, and we'll talk about that, is exactly $51.5 million, and the 90% stage gate has been approved by the Executive Steering Committee in October. So Also, previously, Lisa had mentioned that the 90% stage gate does not impact on our liquidity, and Lisa's provided a separate report on that we talked about earlier. So if we can move to the actual presentation. Carry on. Just in terms of background, so remember that we've got 3 stage gates at 30%. We established the working budget that we would be monitoring against for the project. That happened in November of 2018. Last year, we concluded the 60% stage gate, design stage gate, and went through ESC Farm and the board again in November to get approval on that to move forward. And now we are at the 90% stage gate estimate and are preparing to present that momentarily. This is, I won't go through this again, but this is just the process that we follow, including, obtaining estimates from our consultants, estimates from the contractor, and then having those estimates reviewed by an independent third-party cost consultant who will consolidates them. Here from a scheduling perspective are the various presentations and received to date on the 90% stage gate, with today's meeting being highlighted. Current status of the project. While we're calling this the 90% stage gate, because we're proceeding in a phased fashion across the project, some projects are actually well beyond 90%. In fact, the projects themselves are complete from a construction perspective, while other projects are still under design. So for example, some of the marine works are at 60% design, not 90% design, but on average across the project, we're at 90. You can see we've, as at September 30th, had awarded about just over half of the earthworks, marine and parks contracts, with 55 million in process and 160, which is largely the finishing work in the river, still outstanding to be designed to be completed and the work to be tendered. Bridges, we are at 100% design on all of the new bridges, 90% design on the Lakeshore Bridge, both for the base case, alternative case that we talked about. We've awarded 65-ish% of the contracts. In progress work is the finishes on the bridges, which are all under construction, and then some minor finishes still to be tendered. As at the 30th, and then on roads and services, awarded about 45%, 36% in progress, with 20% again being the final finishes for the public realm to come shortly. And we are nearing completion, 100% of the designs for all of these components. Next. So this is the summary of the where we're at stage gate. So you can see the due diligence numbers at the top of the table, and obviously on the well, not obviously, but on the left side of the graph, 30% design, 60% stage gate numbers, and then the 90% stage gate numbers. So and I'll talk to this more specifically. The final program cost remains unchanged at 1.185 billion. We not the original projects, although certain projects are forecast to be complete above those 30% budgets, while others are forecast to be complete below. The optimized 90% stage gate hard cost estimate is about $500,000 lower than the 60% stage gate. So that's, we believe, a very positive result, notwithstanding all of the tendering done in the last year and all of the construction done in the last year. The actual cost of the work is essentially unchanged. It's in fact a little bit lower than we had estimated a year ago. However, we are recommending a higher estimate at completion than the estimate, and that is to assume the costs for utility cost share risk. So our estimates were based on the utilities, hydro, gas, and the telecoms funding a portion of the work that they need to do, the relocation work that they need to do under the auspices of the Public Works on Highways Act. There is currently the applicability of that act. We work with the city to get
And then the 26.3 million.
However, given that we are now proceeding with this work and we need to fund it to maintain the schedule, we have actually included the costs that we believe to be those the responsibility of the utilities in our estimate of completion because we have begun to realize the risks, and we have been carrying these utility costs as a risk since the 30% stage gate. So our recommended hard cost estimate is therefore not 889, but is 912 million approximately, and our soft cost estimate is at 201 million, which is a little about half a million, or about 5 million higher than the 60% stage gate. So next, talk more about this later, but essentially we have not included the Enbridge 20-inch gas main risk. While we've assessed the risk and identified the risk, if this risk was realized, and it has not been realized to date, but if this risk was realized at its full value, it would drive the project over budget. There's simply not sufficient contingency available to fund this work, and we'll talk more about the status of it in the closed session. With respect to the variances, I mentioned that the overall construction hard cost estimate is higher because we are now carrying 22.5 million in utility cost sharing. You can see that mostly impacts on the roads and services, which are forecast to be 22.5 or 22.9 million higher, or about 15% higher than the 60% stage gate, whereas earthworks and marine and parks and bridges are forecast to actually be either at or less than budget, or at or less than the estimate of 60%, not than the budget. Excuse me, sorry. The soft cost estimate I mentioned is about
to 90%, our contingency
7 million higher than 60%. That relates to a number of specific issues. One is that one of our contracts or one of Elliston's contracts went substantially longer than forecast, and the additional construction administration and site inspection for that the costs for our consultants. There's been some costs associated with the design and redesign of the sediment and debris management area to determine how best to proceed with that project to achieve our goals, given the existence of the Gardner Expressway to Don Valley Expressway ramps. And then there have been some geotechnical challenges related to differential settlement in the roads and the parks that have required us to increase some consulting costs there. So from a contingency perspective, at 60%, I won't go through all of this, but at 60%, the total contingency available and unallocated was $67 million. And all of those allocations of contingency were reported to and approved by the Executive Steering Committee through the appropriate approvals processes. Next. Between the completion of the 60% at the end of last year and the commencement of the 90% stage gate, the contingency actually went up by about $13 million. It went from $67 million to $80.8 million for a variety of reasons. One that are shown here, there was the alternative transit right-of-way finishes on Cherry and Commissioners. We benefited from a substantial savings on one of our tenders, to the tune of about $11.5 million. You can see some additional costs identified both for construction and soft costs. So with, not getting all that detail, but we were at 80.8 million. Based on the 90% estimate, we would have consumed about $6 million, just $6.5 million of that contingency to take us to 74.2. And of course, assuming now the risks associated with or realizing the risks associated with utility cost sharing, takes the contingency from 74.2 down to 51.5 million remaining to be allocated for future risks and unknowns. This is the summary of the risk analysis. So you can see that the probability of achieving our 1.8 $1.185 million target is currently at 70%, which is essentially the same as it was at 30% and at 60%, although lower than it was at due diligence, which was done at 90. For us to get to 90%, the estimate or the contingency remaining would need to be about 72 million, which if we are, we in the city are successful in resolving the utility cost sharing in our favor, we would actually be able to recover enough funding that we would be back up to just above that $72 million in contingency available. So we will continue to work with the city to bring closure to that issue. With respect to the risks and opportunities, in fact, our top risks are not risks, but opportunities. So we've carried opportunities in our risk assessment related to recovery of those cost sharing risks that we've assumed. Then we've got some additional risks related to construction, cutoff walls, that was the contract that was extended. Our water treatment system, disposal of soils remains one of the top 10 risks on the project, as well as landfill capacities. External market forces remains a risk, although the more we tender, the lower that risk and less that risk becomes an issue. Next, from a scheduling perspective, top risks remain the establishment of plantings and the Enbridge 20-inch relocation. Currently, we are forecasting to be complete December 2023, so 3 months in advance of our mandated completion of March 31st, 2024, and there remains contingency or float available within the schedule as we continue to resequence, modify, and if and where necessary, accelerate work to ensure that we maintain our completion date. And then finally on the risk side, these three S-curves identify the probabilities. So currently we are operating to the middle curve, which provides for the 70% probability at 1.185 billion. The curve to the left would reflect the 90%, provided that we were successful in achieving some recoveries from utilities. Next. We are looking at some additional potential cost savings. So we really don't ever stop looking at ways to optimize and make more efficient the work and the design. So these are some of the outstanding issues that we're still looking at in terms of potentially reducing the overall cost of the project and thereby increasing the contingency that's available. I won't go through a whole lot of detail on these ones. But those are some of the issues we're looking at post 90%. Next. And similarly here, carry on. So next steps, get comments from the Farm Committee, finalize report for presentation to the Board of Directors. We'll continue to manage risks, particularly utilities, cost sharing, and the Enbridge risk, and continue to explore design optimizations. Now, there's a fairly lengthy appendix that shows the cost pressures that we faced at 90% and all of the optimizations that we explored and implemented during that process. It's been a lengthy process to get to where we are. The team has done an extremely thorough and extremely good job of addressing these issues. This has not been a simple process. It's taken quite a bit of work to ensure that we continue to track to the original budget or continue to track to budget and to schedule. So you can go through that, and if there's any questions on any of the material in the appendix, I'm happy to take questions on that.
David, thanks for the start. I think the team there has done a great job on cost optimizations to sort of keep us on budget. That's been at the expense of some contingencies that become predictable with the utility cost sharing. But
sorry, Kevin. Jeannie, unfortunately, Jeannie's when she's on, not on. There you go. Thanks, Jeannie. I wasn't able to.
Did you catch what I was saying?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay. I was congratulating you, so you probably just want to hear it again.
Thank you.
I was saying, I agree with what you said. Pardon me, your team's done a very good job on the cost optimization to keep us on budget here. And that's to be commended. I know that it's at the expense of some contingency. I don't have as much experience as others on the contingency, but I would have expected it to be to go lower on at the 90% stage gate. So an excellent job on keeping us on budget, and utility cost sharing is obviously the material issues outstanding that I know we're on top of and trying to deal with, but I think that was I think we're at a reasonably good place, and I'd love to hear views of the other committee members as well. But thanks for that presentation.
Oh.
David, it's Jeannie here, if I can just jump in. So yeah, I'll echo what Kevin said. It's a lot of work, and your team's doing a great job. So just for my kind of, just want to reiterate from my understanding. So really no big surprises from 60 to 90 in terms of increase in hard costs. It looks like it stayed pretty much the same. Some increase in soft costs, but it looks like the two big buckets or two big cost increases were the 22.7 million for utilities cost sharing, which you're proposing to add to the hard cost to escalate the hard cost budget. And then the 26.3 million, which is for utility relocation, which that we're adding to our take out of our contingency. So it sounds like our contingency now then is a 51.5 million, which gives us a 70% probability of delivering on budget. But to get to 90%, our contingency should be 72 million, which gives us a 20.5 million delta. But it sounds like to deal with the delta, your team is looking at the secondary contingency item cost savings, as well as you're saying that the utility relocation cost of 26.3 million, I think I read that you're hoping to recover 100% of it from the city to get to hoping that they will take responsibility for that. And then
that's not correct. That's not correct, Judy. No, we are proceeding. We have included. It's part of the scope of the work to relocate the utilities. So this isn't a scope change. This is really an issue of who's responsible for paying. We're not looking to the city to fund this. We're looking to the utilities to fund this. We're working with the city to do what is necessary to get a ruling that utilities should actually provide the funding that we think they should be providing. So it's so we're carrying an opportunity to receive, to get reimbursed by the utilities, but that involves us going through a process with the city and essentially having it determined through whatever means necessary that the utilities should be paying their share of these costs.
So we're going to pay the 26.3 now, but hopefully we'll get some of it back, hopefully 100%.
Yes.
And then regarding the 22.7 that we're adding to our hard cost budget for utility cost sharing, I think I read that maybe you think that the likelihood is we'll end up with a 50-50 split with the utilities. So we'll recover that.
No, actually, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding. So it's really the utilities are the same number. The number is 22.7 million, and we've added 22.7 million to our hard costs.
Yeah, the hard costs, yeah.
And we are looking at recovering some of that, potentially some or all of that 22.7 as a material. So
it looks like maybe half. I think I read somewhere you think maybe a 50-50 split is likely.
Well, that's just the probability we put in. That's actually not how it's not a direct calculation that way. That's just what goes into the Monte Carlo simulation in terms of.
Okay, and this is all excluding the Enbridge, I guess, which we'll talk about next.
Correct.
Yeah. So my last question was, I know we're at 90% overall, but I noticed that in the earthworks and marine and parks, we're at 60%. So we have 160 million, which has not yet been procured. So what's the risk on that, you think? Do you foresee, because we're only at 60% there.
Well, we're doing.
Do you see any big risk around that?
Well, we're carrying this external market forces is really intended to address the market risk associated with that. We haven't seen any significant additional costs in the work that we've been doing to date. We are continuing to monitor that work and to assess the the soils and to continue to forecast. So we haven't been surprised by what we've found to date, and therefore don't expect to be surprised, because we've done a substantial amount of the work on site, and that's really what the concern is. Don't necessarily expect to be surprised, but we are still carrying contingency, in the potentiality or the eventuality that we do find something that was unexpected in the excavation. From a tendering perspective, I'd say we've done extremely well, and Ulster's done extremely well in terms of the tendering results that we've been getting. They're either on or we've had one or two that have been well under, or they're marginally over. But on an overall basis, the market risk that we're carrying, we haven't realized very much market risk to date. The numbers that we've estimated have been pretty accurate from that perspective. And obviously, the closer we get to completion of tenders, the less risk there is from a market perspective.
When do you think we'll get from that 60% design for the earthworks, marine, and parks up to 90?
Well, earthworks is done. It's under.
It's more the marine and parks, yeah.
It's the marine and parks. So we'll be, the designs will all be complete in the first quarter of next year, and go to tender by the middle of next year. So it'll be, another 6 to 8 months before we've got final pricing on all of that. But as I say, we're working with trying to keep track of what's going on, or keeping track of what's going on the site, forecasting that, and if we do run into any issues on tender, we also are working with Ulster and the consultants to address those issues. For example, estimates or the actual pricing for ground improvements came in higher than budget, so we did a substantial amount of work with the consultants to optimize the ground improvements work, so that when we awarded the contract, we weren't substantially over budget.
Okay, sorry, one more question, Kevin, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
You listed out a bunch of secondary contingency item cost savings.
Costs.
The hard costs, yeah.
And we are looking.
So I noticed a lot of them have to do, that was in Appendix D, and I noticed a lot of them directly impact kind of the public's enjoyment of this amazing space that we're building. Which I guess makes sense when you're value engineering. I'm just wondering, how will your team decide if we are going to take these items out of scope, or when, or is this you're just kind of creating a list for now, but you don't feel we need to pull the trigger on these yet?
Yeah, we're creating a list that we may not have to pull the trigger on. Some we are, but then if you look at the very last page of the appendix, there are also some of those. Some of the things that we're doing, we're actually holding in abeyance, and if there's availability at the end of the project, we haven't consumed 100% of the contingency, then we're looking at the potential to be able to add those back. So they're not really deletions, they're deferrals, and deferred until, and then unless and until we confirm that we've got the funding available to implement them.
Okay, just want to be mindful that, when you open up to the public, taking out lighting and benching and benches and stuff, just
we're not deleting 100% of any of that. So the lighting is, we're just changing the fixture from fixture A to fixture B, and no one will know.
Okay.
With respect to benches, we're going from 100 benches to 75 benches. So again, it's not removing the amenity. It's really just about optimizing. And if we can afford to put back the 25 benches later at the end of the project, we'll go ahead and do that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
It's a revenue opportunity. We could sell them those portable little chairs, waterfront chairs.
We could do fundraising, get your name on a bench.
There you go. Kevin, can I ask a couple of quick questions?
Yep, go ahead, Patrick.
Just when it came to the top, thank you. When it came to the scheduling on your top 10, I just had it's that you've done some meaningful amount of scheduling change to help with the budgeting. So I'm just wondering here how much of that is related more to budgeting than any other real delays in that top 10?
Well, these risks have not been, so the top 10 are just risks. They have not been realized yet. To answer your, so I would say these aren't linked to your question. In answer to your question, there have been some delays that have been incurred, and I mentioned one of the subcontractors was substantially delayed doing the cutoff walls, and so that those delays required us to resequence certain parts of the work to to be able to recover or to accommodate the delays. Other parts of the schedule we have resequenced for efficiency and economy purposes. For example, Cherry Street, we are deferring the opening of Cherry Street from 2021 to 2022 because that will save us a substantial amount of money in temporary roads, temporary signalization, and in fact temporary accommodation of traffic on the bridge that just got delivered, which was part of the original plan, that we would actually route traffic onto the LRT bridge. But we don't need to do that. We can resequence that piece of work, not affect any of the transportation issues in the Portlands, not affect the completion date, but save a substantial sum of money. I'd say, I'm not sure if it's 50-50 or 75-25. It's hard to put numbers to them. Some resequencing was done for the purposes of efficiencies. Some we've had to do because of unanticipated delays in the work on site that we've had to accommodate. And some of that, for example, some of the sites that we needed to take over were delayed. The handover was delayed. The tenants didn't vacate the sites as quickly as they were supposed to, and we didn't get started as quickly as we were supposed to. So those are also included in the work.
Yeah, I guess, look, I was just trying to, if you look at it as it is, oh geez, but some of it is that we controlled it and have adjusted for it versus things that were unexpected and are causing the delays. So we
have both.
Yeah, no, I realize, and I just wanted to get a little bit more context. If you're telling me that's 50-50, then that's good. Okay. And then maybe in the closed session, can we just discuss the overall contingency that we hold versus project specific contingency?
Yep.
And maybe also just the way I understand the utility issue on the bridge is that they're claiming that the work, because it's all been moved forward, is for flood protection versus what would typically be let's say repair, maintenance, renewal, which they would have to pay for.
Well, essentially, Enbridge. We were talking about Enbridge, and we'll talk more about this in closed session, Patrick.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I would say, Enbridge has applied to the Ontario Energy Board. Their application says they need Waterfront. Just save it. Okay, we'll just save it all to the closed session.
Any other questions? We're at the 2-hour mark. This isn't anything that requires our approval. It's just information, but there's, and not one to truncate down, but I would suggest that we move into the closed session now. We've got some things to talk about there. I have a motion to move into the closed session, please.
Hi, Kevin. Just before the closed session, there's a BTY report.
Oh, of course. Geez, yes, my apologies. Thank you, Nina. We might turn that over to Joanne, or who's doing that?
Yep, Joanne.
Okay. Hi, good morning. It's Joanne.
Sorry.
No problem at all. David did such a thorough job. There's not too much for me to add to that, other than just to give the overall synopsis. We've reviewed the approved budget, which is unchanged as expected. The 90% stage gate was undertaken this period. We have been able to validate that. As has been noted by David, 90% stage gate doesn't necessarily mean that everything's been completed to 90% design and cost estimating stage. There are some specific exclusions which will be tracked. Our expectation is that going forward, that if there are movement within the estimate completion, then that will get our attention and we'll deep dive on those things in Q1 and Q2 and 3 next year. The current commitments are incorporated within the nice stage gate. The cost optimized measures have been approved, and to validate the budget, we have no concerns. The 9th stage gate was conducted in terms of process in accordance with best practices and as we expected. With regards schedule, there's been discussion about the schedule, and we're reporting that there are contextually, we're reporting against the current update versus the baseline. And so in that basis, we're seeing that 16 projects are currently forecast to be delayed, although within the timeline stated, so the March 2024 date. What we've noted regarding that is that there has been resequencing as well as delays, and there's been some discussion about whether or not the project may be rebaselined. That would typically happen if there's been significant resequencing of works for reasons of delay or just because there's a change in methodology and approach. But again, in general, the process in place is robust and in accordance with best practices. In terms of scope, we haven't noted any scope changes this current period. There's been no amendment to the project charters that are executed. And then in accordance with the risk management, again, that's in accordance with the best practices that we normally have seen previously. We note that COVID-19 impact is incorporated in the risk register, albeit in a limited way. But we don't currently have any concerns other than the obvious matters which have been mentioned regarding risks that are being tracked. So that's generally the summary. So in conclusion, we concur with the status rating of low for schedule, low for budget, and the risks are at amber level at this period. If there are any questions, happy to address those.
None here. Any other committee members, questions for Joanne?
No, sounds like good news.
Joanne, is Jeannie here?
Hi.
Yep. Just wanted to say thank you. And also, I just wanted to note, I was happy to read about the lake level, that that's all been resolved.
Yeah.
Which was good to read.
Good.
Okay. Am I now good? I know to close session, or did I forget anything else?
Now you can go into closed session.
Okay. Motion to go into closed session?
Sure, I'll put it forward.
Sorry, Kevin. There we go. Go ahead. Sorry, Kevin.
And a motion to approve the minutes of closed session subject to the change I requested.
I move it, Kevin.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. And then a motion to adjourn, I guess, would be all that would be left.
Sure, I'll motion that.